So our boy Dennis lost AC for about a week. He's been smelling AC in the car, just drained completely. We checked the lines and it doesn't seem like any of the lines are leaking. So it looks like we're gonna have to take apart the dash, and most likely, from what I understand, this is kind of an issue with these cars, the AC evaporators, we're gonna be replacing that. So that's what this video is about. Welcome back to Yev's Builds, which should probably be called Yev's Repairs at this point. So let's go, dude. Before we start with this job, you gotta move your seats as far back and as low as possible. That way you get as much headroom down here as you can, dude. And then of course come up to your battery, take a 10 mil and disconnect your negative terminal. You don't want any sort of shortage on this during this job, so disconnect it for safety reasons. You wanna get some prying tools. You can get these literally anywhere. ECS, that's kind of where we got these. You wanna get them in plastic because when we're gonna be removing the trim pieces and all the plastic moldings on the inside, you don't wanna scratch or damage anything, so plastic is the way to go. Carefully and gently remove this front trim piece. If you know anything about BMW, you do know that these clips typically do not last, so just be real careful or just have a bunch of them ready to be replaced. This one's came out very good. Pretty straightforward. Tuck this away. Same concept here. Yep. So along the entire trim piece there's going to be a bunch of T30 Torx bolts. You remove all those and you just kind of start disassembling everything, really. So T20s all around, Torx screws right there, a few over here. Boom, dude.
Alright, so here you have these two like clips holding it in. So you want to just pull it out as much as you can and pull the bottom side up and just stick your plastic in there and just slowly work it out of there. And it should slide right out.
And same thing on this side, on the passenger side, just two T20s over here. Same thing, kind of pry it out, and this whole thing just removes just like that, dude. It's also a good idea to put your screws back into where they belong just so you don't lose them, or you can put them on little baggies. We don't got baggies, so we're gonna screw them back in, dude. Seems like the display is next. There's also two T20s, one on each side. A little bolt right there, and a little one on that side. Boom. Should be a connector. Gently pry it off. Don't break anything, because dude, you're just gonna have a bunch of things chattering once you assemble this back in. There you go. Nice. It's a little clip that removes, and now put your display aside. Be careful with it. The centerpiece also looks like there's two T20s, one on each side. I'll push the little slider down and then push it outward. That's how you remove these. Pretty simple. Just like that. Nice. Very good. Looks like there's 4 T20s. That's that big boy. If you're not filming like we are, it's a good idea to remember where all these connectors go and where they connect. So either make yourself a diagram or something, but remember not to confuse them. Because they do look like they're the same connector style, so just be real careful. Yeah. Dude. Nice. So to remove the steering wheel next, on the bottom of the steering wheel there's gonna be a specific little hole. You could put a little flathead or some sort of little socket in there. You push in there and that pretty much unclips the airbag clip. And it should pop the airbag out. Once you feel that springy tension, the airbag is gonna move and it should be able to pop out from the bottom. From the bottom side, just kind of pry it out from the bottom. There you go. And disconnect the connectors for the airbag sensors. The steering wheel itself is held on by a 15 mil bolt. Remove that, obviously counterclockwise. A little side note, when you're putting the steering wheel back on later on at the end of this, you see those two little notches? They're kind of, one is on the wheel itself and one, yeah. They're supposed to align. That's what gives off proper alignment on the steering wheel, and just keep a note of that. They're supposed to align when you're putting it back on. Oh, there we go. There's 2 fat clips behind the cluster. You push them from the top, both of them at the same time, simultaneously, and then you pretty much have to pull on the cluster itself. That way it pops out forward, and that's pretty. Look, it sounds easier than it's done, but it's doable.
Well, you kind of have to go
Oh yeah, yeah.
There's two things holding.
So flip it towards yourself, right? Yeah. From the top. Twist the top towards yourself. You can't just pull forward. You have to pull the top towards yourself until it twists and rotates just like that. And then you unclip all the clips, all the connectors. And then these side pieces seemingly look like they just pop off. One on this side and one on the passenger, obviously. Whoop.
I think.
Well, that's cool because we could remove this. To get the bottom panel off, there's two T20s and two T30s. This should just come off, yep. And then this airbag connector, very simple. You pull this tab forward.
Out.
Or out, yeah, and then you pull the actual connector out. Just like that. So there's another bracket on the bottom. It looks like it's a T20 bolt and the rest just pries off. All you gotta do is just pry it off and it looks like that's it. Yeah, straightforward.
Couldn't remove this without removing the
center console, yep. So we're headed down here now. So next up is the center console. This little piece right here just pops off. Nice. There's a T20 in here. Just like that, it pries off. And then you unclip all your wires and all your clips from here and all the connectors.
One more.
Beautiful. All right, so it looks like for us to remove this whole side piece panel, we're gonna have to remove this shifter lever. A couple of T20s in there also. Remove those. And the sucker just comes off. Nice. That's off. Next move is to remove this entire shifter bracket and mechanism. So there's two giant 10mm bolts. Right down there. Right over there. Bunch of T20 screws. All over. Make sure not to lose anything. And now we have access to that little bolt right there, which then we remove that little guy. So we gotta remove the armrest then. There's a little T20 over here, and this whole like center console cloth material stuff should be able to pop out. It looks like it's already popping off, just it's being held by that one bolt, so here goes nothing. There we go. Would you look at that? Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Oh, so many more connectors here, dude. That's so sick. I mean, you've heard this more than one time already. Just remove all the connectors and pop this whole tray out, dude. That blue and pink wire are a little bit of a doozy, but I mean, you'll see the clips on them, and they're pretty simple. You just push on them and they
pull them off from the wall.
Yeah, they're clipped in by clips, and then the connectors themselves pull off by a little tab on each one of them. It's pretty simple. Just kind of a doozy, kind of annoying to reach down there and kind of figure this out, but yeah, pretty simple. That black one, there's a tab that slides up. That tab just slides up, and then you kind of roll it back, and that's it. And then this whole tub removes. And then, and only then, does this little trim piece, it just slides up like that, and that removes, which is nice. There's only two bolts, yep, they're T20s. But before we remove the entire bracket for the shifter, we gotta remove the shifter itself first. There's a couple T20s, remove those, and then the entire bracket should come off, because the wiring, we're gonna have to disconnect that. The wires are just wired a little bit funky, so to remove this entire bracket, you gotta remove the actual shifter mechanism itself. This entire bracket should be able to just pull up. It's a whole lot of wiring, so don't lose track of it, okay? So there's a bolt right there on the side. It's a T20 also. There's two right here. 1, 2 T20s. One right there, T20, and one down there, T20. And this whole bracket should remove. There we go, there we go. Biggest question is, why did we remove this? Dude, honestly, anything you budge, it feels like it doesn't move until you remove something else. So if you know a better solution, comment us, obviously, but so far this is what we got. Then you remove this, you literally just pop it off, disconnect that, and then there's gonna be two giant bolts. There's gonna be two T30s right here. You remove them two, then you come up front, and there's gonna be two T20s. One right there, and one right there. You remove those, and this entire center console should be able to just slide back. we're not actually removing the entire center console, we're just pulling it back. That way we have more room and actually space to remove the actual dash right there. So when you remove the bolts, technically you should just slide out. There you go, remove that speaker wire. So to remove the OBD2 plug, you just kind of pull a little clip in forward, take a little flathead, and it does pop out just like that. Looks like there's 4 T20s over here to remove this glove box. There's a T20 in there, a T20 right in there. There's a T20 and a T30 right here, and a T20 and a T30 right there. And then this panel just unclips like that. There's more sensors and more plugs you gotta remove. But once you get all the connectors off, to remove the actual glove box, there's gonna be a little T20 on this side and a little T20 on that side, and then the box is just removed. The glove box then drops down and you are greeted with another light right there. You gotta disconnect that. And another sensor right here, disconnect all that. And then before we remove the actual dash and get going with that, there's gonna be another dash airbag right underneath. So there's gonna be a black connector on the right, a blue connector in the middle, and a green one on the left. So the way to remove airbag connectors, if you haven't realized by now, if you're looking at this connector, for example, you gotta pull this tab that way, and then you can actually remove the airbag connector the same exact direction. So this blue one, the tab is gonna go this way, and then you can pull the connector out that way. The green one, the tab goes that way, and you can pull the connector out that way, just like that. In case you missed it, these airbag connectors are not too complicated. So you see this black connector? It pulls out like that, right? So originally, it sits like this, and you gotta push it outward, and then you can pull this entire connector out of the airbag. Simple, but they're pretty fragile. And I don't think they sell replacement parts, so be careful with these, man. For us to remove the dash completely, you gotta take the center steering column and you gotta unclip it into 2 halves. Just take a regular prying tool. There's a clip on that and one on the other side. Looks like you gotta push them in.
Oh.
Just like that. And of course, more connectors, dude. Then there's gonna be 4 T25s, 1 in each corner. Yep.
And as per usual.
As per usual, there's more connectors.
That's an easy one.
That is an easy one. Unlike the airbag ones.
Oh, one more.
So there's 2 connectors on the clock spring. Pop those out. Next up, we're gonna be removing the A-pillar covers. There's gonna be a little plastic airbag cover right here. You pry it off with a flathead. Then there's gonna be a T25 bolt right here. You just prise off, there's a few clips on there, and you just remove it just like that. It's very simple. You have to kind of pry it off and then pull it towards yourself and it slides out. So to remove the dash completely and freely, there's gonna be a bolt in there. They're all T20, so there's gonna be a bolt in there. There's gonna be a bolt in here. There's gonna be a bolt down there. One down there. Over there. One down here. One down in there in that hole, one up there, one down there on the tab, one down there on the tab, and then one down here, yep. And the dash should freely come out with a little bit of resistance, of course, because it's never easy. So never mind, it's not as easy, but there's a couple clips, you could see them right there. So then there's that little speaker, you gotta unplug it. There we go. And then if you look at it from the driver's side, there's another clip. These wires just clip into it, to the actual dash. They're kind of in that corner, you see that? Right there, right by the heads-up display. And now, the dash should remove. And there we got it, dude. Damn. Damn. And we're that much closer to the evaporator of this vehicle. Wow, exciting, cool stuff. It looks like a bear skeleton. That's sick. So next up, we're removing the entire, this skeletal piece, this frame piece. There's gonna be 2 13mm nuts over here. You're gonna need the long extended sockets. Looks like there's a 10mm right there, right over here. Looks like there's a 13mm right there, a 13mm on this side, a 10mm on this side, 10 right there, and then 13mm nuts right there. But before we remove this frame piece, we gotta remove the heads-up display, which is held by two T30s right there. Remove those up. When you go down underneath to get the heads-up display out, there's gonna be one more T30 right there where you see it moving. Right there. Another T30. Right underneath the steering rack. Right there. And then the frame is gonna have two 13 mils right there and then two 13 mils right there. And then of course the electrical connections, because can't go without them. Just like that. Connectors come out and the heads-up display comes out with it. After you remove these two 13 mils and then those two 13 mils, then comes off the steering rack. It looks like there's two 6 mil Allen, that one right there, and then one underneath this cloth. And then on the passenger side, a couple 10 mils right here. And once you remove all your clips and all your ground cables and everything, your entire rail should just slide out like that, dude. And we're almost there. Next up, we gotta remove this corner piece and that corner piece. They're very simple. They're just a few clips over here. You pull them out and this whole thing just kind of pops out and removes. So then you gotta remove both wiper arms and the cowl underneath. They're gonna be 16 mil nuts. There you go, see? So the cowl looks like it has a bunch of these clips all along. Then there's gonna be a Phillips screw right over here and the same thing on the other side. So because of the way these clips are shaped, you see that? They kind of, they go like this underneath the windshield. So to remove this cowl, you kind of have to push it down and then lift the bottom piece up. So kind of twist it like that, and that's how you get it out. These are 15 mil bolts. You remove them, one of these bars on each side. All these trim pieces right here, as you can see, this side and that side, and then those little pieces. There's just a bunch more clips. They all clip along this entire area. There's just a bunch of clips and a bunch of T30s all around, so remove that also. Because we're gonna have to remove this back piece too. This little guy right here, there's not too many bolts. As you can see, there's a T30 here, here, one in the back right there, and then this center one right here, and it looks like even that one really. These AC lines, pretty much there's this little cover. It literally just pops out, so you can pull it out like that. And then these two AC lines are gonna have two 5mm Allens. Okay, you pull those out, and technically these should pop out with a little bit of force. There's some O-rings that should pop out. Then we gotta drain the coolant from the heater core. There's 3 hoses right there. If you don't already know, these F10s apparently don't have a drain plug for coolant anywhere on the radiator or anywhere really. So the annoying part about this process is the fact that you have to remove so much extra stuff. All these panels and all these hoses and lines and all this you gotta remove just to get rid of as much coolant as possible. And what we did is we took off the reservoir that was here and pulled a few lines from here. We got rid of as much coolant as we could have. Therefore, we are now almost ready to pull the heater core lines. There's 3 of them. Take some pliers, squeeze them, pull the lines, and pretty much once it's done draining as much as it can, then we will be able to pull the actual evaporator and heater core unit from the inside of the car. Just know that this is going to be a really, really messy job, so be prepared and remove as much as you will, but it's going to be messy. These 3 hoses are a complete doozy to remove, but definitely doable. You just got to pull on them real hard. Make sure not to break any of these extra lines that are around this area, because dude, it's a complete doozy, I'll tell you. So then when you get back inside, we're almost there to remove this entire unit. There's going to be a 10mm on this rail, remove that, and there's going to be a 10mm on this holding the ground, remove it. Before we actually pull this, you see this wire that goes way under behind that. It's hard to tell, but it goes behind that vent down there, and it goes through the firewall. So you get down over here, you remove this panel. There's going to be one T20 on it. You put it off to the side like this. Then this panel, there's like 4 or 5 T20s also. You pull this thing off, and the blower has this little sensor right here. Looks like you just gotta disconnect that and push it through the firewall in order for us to remove it. Just gotta pull it up, and that is removed. Just like that. Push it through, and hopefully we can get this out. And then it looks like a harness connects to that airbag module or something. It looks like it's an airbag module. Disconnect that. There's still a bunch of harnesses that you just have to disconnect from this box all the way around. Some clips on that side. This white rubber plug disconnects also. You just gotta pull it from that little plastic fitting. Just the harness itself, there's a lot of clips that it's sticking on. Just got to remove it from all over the place to free up this entire box, really. And the rest of the wires are pretty much, it looks like they're part of the unit. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The most annoying thing in the world. So to split this entire unit housing apart, there's gonna be a few bolts along the entire side, right? Every bolt you see up top of this entire housing, that's what you gotta remove. We removed definitely a little bit too much, but it doesn't hurt because there's a bunch over here, there's a few from the sides that you gotta remove, a few from this side. On the bottom sides, there should be a few also. And technically, in theory, this just kind of splits like that. There you go. It splits off, and this is the evaporator, man. There you go, that's the evaporator. On the inside. Nice. Good job, BMW. Nice. Before we replaced the actual evaporator itself, we decided and realized that if you take a look at this boot cover, right, it's gonna be a complete pain to put this back onto that unit. It's hard to explain, but the way it sits in there is kind of, it goes into all these bezels and edges and everything. So we're gonna remove this boot. To remove this boot, the top portion of the blower motor, there's a few T20s all around and a few T25s. Just remove the T25s, the slightly bigger bolts. There should be only 4. Remove those and you remove this entire cover. Take that boot off because it technically just kind of slides out. Slide it out, put it on into that unit, and then it's gonna be much easier to slide it onto here and then put this cover on. Look, it's not as bad as it sounds, so just watch this. Looks like you're gonna have to remove the sensor also. There's a tab on this side and the tab on that side. You squeeze them. The boot just slid right off, and that's perfect because putting this back on is gonna be way easier. You can see that the boot has to slide through like this, and that's how it sits in there. Therefore, we gotta remove this to put it onto the actual heater core casing first, and then we'll just slide this back on. It's gonna be way easier, dude. As you can see, this boot, why we would never be able to put it back on properly is because this little border, this little plastic piece, it removes, right? So you have to slide it into its actual position right there. Every corner, every little bezel, it's all in there. And then it slides right up into this little thing. And then the top covers this part, and then this piece slides all the way up in there. So that's done. The boot part is done. Let's move on. While we're down here, apparently these cars have not only an issue with the evaporators going off, but also the expansion valve. Here's the part number. So to remove that, there's a couple 3mm screws. Those 2 O-rings on that side gotta be replaced. So slide it back in, dude, the new little guy. So the part number for the new evaporator is that right there. Put it all back in, and everything's pretty much in reverse at this point on. Put all the covers back on. You could put that cover back on, bolt it down all the way, and then put that other second piece on and bolt the rest of the bolts on. It's actually very simple.
After you put these covers back together, and then all those T20s, you screw them back in, we're ready to go ahead and get the O-rings in place for the AC lines. There's gonna be 6 total, and we're gonna set this unit back in there, hook it up to those AC lines, and the heater core lines are gonna stick in through there, and we're gonna hook them up on the other side. So first things first, before we put the AC lines on over there, we are replacing the expansion valve and the O-rings on it. We're already here. We didn't do all that work for nothing, so we're just gonna replace it even though it doesn't look bad. What you're gonna need is 2 thick O-rings like that, 2 thick O-rings like that, a thin one, and another thin one like that. I originally accidentally ordered just these right here, and that's not enough to do this job. The thin ones go on the evaporator side, and then we'll do the ones in there. Those are 2 of the thick ones. This whole flange thing goes into the expansion valve. There's only one way to do it, so you can't mess that up. And then the other 2 thick ones are right here, but they will go onto these lines over here, and we'll put them on last, right before we're ready to hook this thing up. And one thing to not forget is put this thing back in there. And it's gonna help with noise cancellation and all that. So I got those 2 Allens off. Make sure you don't throw away the original ones, because these will not take place of the original. You'll have to reuse them or order actual bolts for the evaporator. And I guess you don't need the skinny O-rings because it already comes with it. So we're gonna go ahead and lube those up and get that new expansion valve together into that flange. So I got those O-rings on there, and then on the flange we changed those O-rings. And you want to lubricate them. We used PAG oil, which is AC oil, but you can also just use regular seal lubricant. So now we got that flange onto the expansion valve. Just literally clicks in, and like I said, you can't screw it up. Next, we're gonna hook up the expansion valve to the evaporator lines. Word of advice, before you put the covers back on, put the expansion valve with this flange onto the evaporator lines and hook it up. It's just gonna be easier that way. The way I got it on there, so I'm not pushing on the evaporator, I just stuck the lower bolt in and I lined it up to the hole of the bracket that holds it in place. Got that in there a little bit, screwed it on, and then I did the top one, lined it up, and then I slowly just tightened everything. So I got the new O-rings on there, first lubricated them and then put them on from the inside. We're pretty much set. We can set this thing in there. Thankfully my wife is here to be able to hold this up for me, because if you remember, this harness right here goes on top of that HVAC unit. Now that we got that thing sitting where it should be, I want to hook up these AC lines and have a mechanic here check the AC system's holding pressure. Make sure you get that seal that goes around that flange that attaches to the expansion valve. Make sure you get that seated properly. There's a little groove for it to sit in. You don't want water and whatnot getting through there and going into your cab. You do the same thing to the coolant lines for the heater core, but we're not really worried about that right now. I just want to get that hooked up so a mechanic can check the pressure and make sure that the AC system's not leaking. I had a mechanic come out here, which thankfully we work at a shop, and there was one right next to me. He just hooked up to this line right here, to that line right there. He did a vacuum and then filled it with Freon and oil and dye. So far everything looks good, no leaks. Originally when we were diagnosing the problem, there was a massive Freon leak coming out of the center vents. Can't hear anything, it's fully pressurized and it's holding pressure.
So after you get the evaporator replaced, literally everything is backwards at that point on. So pray to God you took good pictures and good footage, because dude, it's gonna get a little confusing. But at this point on, it's just literally, you go backwards. You connect everything backwards, you just put everything back the way it was, but in reverse. So, good luck, dude. Dude, and this is it. After the entire dash is assembled, it's gonna look something like that. I'll just tell you one thing, this is definitely gonna be taking more time than you think it is, but it's doable. It's definitely doable. After the entire dash is assembled, all you gotta do is go to somebody who knows how to refill the AC properly. Don't use those, you know, one-time use things that you buy from freaking AutoZone. Don't do that. Go to a shop, they'll fill it up for you properly, put them correct amount of pounds in there and everything, so you'll be solid. Obviously bleed your coolant because we had to drain a little bit, as you saw earlier. But dude, this is definitely doable, man. You have another person with you, get yourself a dentist who's gonna have a car like this, who's gonna have issues, and do these issues for him. But that's it, man. If you don't know what's going on with this channel, dude, I'll just say this. Check it out, because we got a bunch of stuff going on. We got an E39 M5, we just kind of pretty much did a few restoration projects on it. It's all looking good. The V10 M3 is still happening. It might be a V10 i8. I don't know. I just still need to find a chassis. Just stay tuned, dude. Like, share, and subscribe. That stuff real helps. I'm just saying. It's cliche, I know, but it's out. Peace.